Welcome to another episode of AI, the Future of Us, a podcast style video series where we explore the ways in which AI is shaping our future and how we can prepare for the changes that lie ahead. I'm your host, Priyanka Vergadia, and today I am joined by Erwin Huizenga, the developer advocate for Vertex AI. He has been doing a lot of work around machine learning and generative AI, and I'm very excited to have you here, Erwin.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for listening or watching.
Amazing. So we'll dive right in. Could you please tell us a little bit about your background? I know a lot about your work, but for everybody else, your expertise in AI and everything that's been going on.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been in the field for machine learning for more than 10 years. When I started my career, it wasn't called machine learning. It was called data mining, statistics, advanced analytics back then. So I started at a startup, and early on I learned that data and sort of data science was the future. So I started developing myself into that direction, started working as a data scientist. And then at some point in my career, I got hired at Google, which is already almost 6 years ago. Long time flies when you're having fun. And at Google, I've always been working on machine learning, and some of my focus areas are mainly machine learning operations, large-scale machine learning, and like you said, Priyanka, nowadays generative AI as well.
That is amazing. The part that I love about that answer, the way you described your journey, is also for anybody who's like trying to build their career in AI. I think I picked up a subtle points in there where it's like, it's not always called the same things. You started with data mining, now eventually it was data science, and then now it's all these muddy waters of data engineering, data science, AI. It's all like sort of coming together at the same time. So for anybody out there who's looking for info on like how you evolve careers, like that was a great example right there. With that, let me move to my next question. Could you share some key developments in AI that you've witnessed during your 10 plus years of career?
Yeah, I think that there's been a lot, Priyanka, and I think you made a great point, right? Things change over the years as well, and we've gone from indeed statistics, data mining, advanced analytics into data science, and now machine learning, large-scale machine learning, and of course generative AI. So we've seen a lot of developments, at least I've seen throughout my career in this field. And I think some of the key developments I've seen, and you just mentioned them as well, are first of all, I think we've moved from sort of analytics, statistics applied to sort of smaller data sets, basic modeling that organizations, that developers have been doing throughout the years, to sort of the era where we went from this batch and statistical modeling into more deep learning, more advanced type of machine learning. And that has been a game changer, I think, for a lot, but still was sort of a niche, right? So a lot of folks, a lot of practitioners, they needed to be an expert on writing, especially in the early days, challenging TensorFlow code, or you used other libraries to build your neural network. So you need sort of that theoretical expertise, and you need to know how to write code and how to then also deploy these systems in production, so which was always challenging. But what we've seen now throughout the years is that cloud computing has made that a lot easier. So that was a big differentiator, or a big difference for machine learning as well, and it made it easier for all of us to do machine learning and to do production machine learning. And then nowadays, in the past year or years, we've seen, of course, generative AI and large language models come up and have another push, and also, we'll probably talk about this later as well, sort of help with that democratization of AI and open up machine learning and machine learning capabilities for more folks outside of the machine learning PhD space, to call it a bit like that, sort of the expert space, and where more and more folks can leverage the capabilities of AI and machine learning. And I think that has been one of the biggest changes I've seen throughout the years as well, especially the last years. And cloud computing and APIs and a lot of the new technology has been driving a lot of that.
Yeah, and with the advent of cloud computing, more people can actually explore and use machine learning and AI without even having to know machine learning and AI. Like I remember the time when we launched Auto ML, for example. Like just being able, it's not generative AI, but it is still no code, being able to create machine learning models. And then from there to here, it's being able to create our own generative AI models that can be deployed without much of coding is absolutely an amazing amount of progress. So coming to the impact of AI, in your opinion, what are the most significant ways that AI is currently impacting us, society, developers? Like it's impacting a lot. What are your opinions?
Well, you already gave one of the answers, Priyanka. So I think I totally agree with you. Like democratizing AI is one of the biggest changes we've seen in the past years. And let's talk about what that means and what that means for folks out there. So I think it mainly means that AI is more accessible for people outside of sort of the specialist realm of knowing machine learning in and out. So more and more developers are getting access to APIs, to our AutoML. So it's more accessible for other type of practitioners as well. Business analysts are accessing machine learning through maybe things like BigQuery. So there's a lot of more access to these advanced AI capabilities. And what we see also is that these developers are using these capabilities to build new types of use cases. And I always give the example of a scale up that's running on Google Cloud that's head up by a good friend of mine. And they built their whole startup around APIs and AutoMLs. And that gave them the ability to apply these very advanced AI capabilities very quickly and also scale very quickly across use cases, across different regions. So democratizing AI is definitely one thing that we've seen be sort of driving a lot of change recently. But also the way we interact with AI, and I think Bart is a great example of that as well, is that the way we interact with AI, I think is for a lot of folks out there is becoming more and more real, right? In the past, what we've seen is that machine learning was driving things like recommendation systems, or maybe you build a search system or a fraud detection system that we see a lot. So this is typically hidden sort of for consumers or for users of platforms. But now I think it's more real for everyone what the capabilities and the impact of AI can be. So it's way more visible as well, I think, outside of the space of practitioners. So I think that's something I've seen change in the past years as well.
So this reminds me of, and the way you were answering it as well was very similar to the time when cloud was evolving too, right? Like this was like 10-ish, more than 10 years ago when cloud was evolving. We used to find it so amazing to be able to just deploy something so quickly and having a virtual machine just at our fingertips on the click of a button versus asking an IT team to actually give us a machine, right? Like that type of I can like relate to that with AI now, where it's like I can build my own model. I don't need to be a data scientist. I need to make sure that I have decent amount of great data and then be able to build these models. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now.
It is. And do you still remember the days where we had to buy our servers or we had to install our servers? Yeah, I'm happy that those days are over as well.
Exactly. And I think that's exactly where AI and ML is leading as well, which is we wouldn't have to worry about what infrastructure these models are being trained on or run on. We will care more about just that little part of the puzzle, which is how do I enable my business use case with AI and here's my data. Please train the model for me. When it comes to industries, there are different industries are going to adopt AI in different ways. So, how do you see AI evolving in the near future with impact on different industries?
Yeah, well, I think there's going to be a lot of impact in the coming years, and we've already seen this happening. I think in the past years, mainly also because of cloud, as you pointed out, Priyanka, is that now we're going to see, I think, more, especially more and more adoptions of natural language type of use cases. thanks to large language models, thanks to generative AI. So when we talk to developers, when we talk to customers, organizations working on AI, I think everyone now sort of has an understanding of the impact that AI can offer and some of the things it can do. So folks start thinking about new use cases. So every time I talk to developers, I learn about the new use case. So I think we will see a lot of different use cases across a lot of industries. One that I see on a daily basis because and my wife sees in marketing is that, for example, a lot of the marketing work she's doing, like writing blog posts, like generating keywords out of content, you see that a lot of this is already driven by tools like Bart that help you write or that give you creative ideas on writing. So you see that there's a lot of impact already in different types of organizations, types of use cases. And I think a lot of these capabilities offer a lot of value for folks, but I'm hoping also to see a lot of use cases in things like the medical space or healthcare so that we can also have an impact there. And that's something I'm seeing as well and hoping that we can drive more change as well.
With all these enhancements, with AI becoming more at the fingertips, the people who are building these models and people who are responsible for creating these experiences should follow some general guidelines and principles. So, what are some of these guidelines on responsible AI that we should consider when developing AI? And I know we follow some at Google. So, can we dive a little bit into that? Because I think that's something that everybody's worried about right now.
Yeah, that's a great question, Priyanka. And I think we can do a whole podcast on this topic alone. So I'll highlight a few that I see that are important for teams and that teams like to think about, right? And I think for every organization and every team, these might change and are different. So I think the first thing is that it's very important if you work on these use cases to have a discussion with the business, with the technical teams, with everyone involved to understand for your use case what is important for you, because I don't think there's one template that works for everyone. But a few things that we've talked about as Google and that you can read up online as well is that I think there's a few things that are important, and I'll quickly highlight some of them. Is that taking a human-centered design approach is very important, I think. The way users will interact with the service you're building, I think, and understanding that is very important. I think having that grounded in the start of your project is going to help you a long way. Then I think what is important is that identifying multiple metrics to do your evaluation. So not looking at one metric, but looking at multiple metrics will help you understand your model better. And secondly, also thinking about what are some of the metrics that we want to monitor in production. So when we have an AI system in production, how are we going to measure performance or any issues? So having that, giving that thought early in the process is very important as well. Another thing that's very important is test, test, and test. So keep testing, keep improving, keep learning as a team. And if you have that mindset, I think then that will help you a lot as well. And the last thing I want to point out is that if you understand and can look at the raw data, so not at the features that you generated or someone else has generated for you, gives you a better understanding of the data. So again, and this I've learned since the beginning of my career, everything starts with data, high quality data. So if you have access to that raw data, if you can also have a look at the raw data, I think it's going to help you better understand your data and also build better systems and also help with building more responsible systems as well. Outside of these points I mentioned, there's many, many more. And like I said, we can do a whole podcast on this, Priyanka.
These are great. These are great pointers. Human-centric approach, continue to test, make sure you monitor your raw data, and then it's this whole iterative approach, right? You don't just do this once, you continue to evolve, improve, and that's how the model works for the user that you're building it for, but also for in more responsible and ethical ways. With that, what are some examples of how AI is currently being used effectively in our industries?
Yeah, I think, Priyanka, we see a lot of them, right, when we talk to developers. There's so many cool, great use cases. And so some I see across industries, and I talked about this a bit already, is in the healthcare, in the medical space, I see a lot of impact. We recently published something around MedPalm 2, so a palm model that is sort of developed for the medical domain for safely answering medical questions. And we've seen that this model has performed very, very well in some of the benchmarks. So keen on seeing how this will impact a lot of the medical and healthcare use cases in the future as well. Another interesting area that I've recently seen, because I was one of the mentors in one of the Google Accelerator programs for startups on circular economy, is that how these circular economy startups are leveraging some of these AI, generative AI capabilities to work sort of to make the world a better place and to work on things like having less waste or optimizing some of our supply chains to be more efficient and to have less waste. So I see a lot of different use cases, and I'm always surprised by how creative folks are with use cases as well. But these are two that I thought were very, very cool.
Really cool. I've heard that MedPalm 2 has also been able to clear some medical exams, which is like, it blows my mind. That is how you trust these models, right? If you trust a doctor who's gone through these exams and in these models are being trained on the same type of data. So that is all very exciting. How can companies and individuals best leverage AI to improve their operations and to achieve the business goals that they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, this is a key question. I think I get a lot from developers, but also from business folks. There's a lot of answers we can give, but I think two are crucial, and I typically give is that I think everything starts with the use case. So identifying the right use case is going to set you up for success later on. So having a discussion with IT, with the business, and aligning on what are the expectations, what is the use case we're trying to solve is first of all essential. And AI in itself shouldn't be a goal. Solving a specific use case, a specific problem, that should be a goal. And secondly, what I think is very important, once you get started, think about what are the capabilities that are going to help me solve this use case, but also bring things to production as quickly as possible so we can iterate and test, like you talked about as well, Priyanka. And how I typically like to look at this and how I discuss it with developers and practitioners is that try to go from API to AutoML to building a custom model. So let's say first try to see if a API can solve this problem. If not, try to see if AutoML can solve your problem. If not, then it's time to build a custom model. Because if you start with the APIs first and you can use an API, it's easier to get started. It saves you a lot of time, and it's also easier to sort of manage things in production. So going through that as well, I think is important for folks to look at.
All the 3 points you mentioned are like so important for startups and for companies to think about. AI is really not the goal. That's how you actually make your use case happen, if at all, right? Sometimes you don't even need AI to make your use case happen, which is why you have to start with the use case. And then again, you don't need custom models unless you really, really have to build a custom model, because for those who've done it, will tell you, you do not want to be in the business of building custom models because they are hard to maintain, they're hard to build. So all of that. Thank you. I think that was like, if anybody watching is taking just one thing out of it, that answer has done it for me. What are some key skills that individuals or people who want to be in this AI-driven world should possess to be successful in this AI-driven world?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know we talked about this in the past, so Priyanka, I think this is a question we get a lot. And I'm very excited about this because this has, I think, changed a lot. If you would have asked me like 5 years ago, like I would say, go study something like math or computer science, right? Go work on machine learning use cases, try to build machine learning systems, work with TensorFlow, like a lot of that stuff. But it's still there if you want to be a machine learning practitioner that maybe does research or that builds these custom models that you talked about as well. But I think There's also now a second sort of way to learn about this, is that because of all these APIs, AutoML capabilities, is that you don't need to be an in and out expert on machine learning theory. No, I think some of the skills you can learn are sort of maybe identifying what is the right use case, as you mentioned. Maybe what are some of the capabilities out there, like APIs, like AutoML, that they can use for these use cases. Maybe what is like a structured data use case versus what is an unstructured data use case. So some of these fundamentals, right? And I think when you do, for example, the machine learning crash course that we have on Google, or there's some courses on identifying use cases, I think that is a great start. And then getting familiar with some of these newer capabilities like AutoMLs or APIs, I think will help you a lot. And I don't think it takes a lot of time to sort of get started with this. And I think that's a great starting point as well for folks, and especially if you're new to this, to just and then implement a few use cases, right? Get hands-on experience. There's a lot of great examples out there. We also launched, so a bit of a shameless plug, we launched a new repo on Google Cloud, GitHub, on generative AI that gives you a few examples on how you can use the API to build some of your use cases easily. So learning about use cases, learning about some of the capabilities that are there, on, especially on cloud, and then getting started, I think that is a great way to get into this.
Yeah, you sort of play, and then once you have played, you understand what your level is, right? Like, where do you want to
Yes.
start? And this example of the GitHub repo that you launched is like the perfect way to start, where it's like, okay, this is kind of okay, this is my level, I'm getting it. Or if you start with something like building a custom model, and I think there's more chances of like you quitting that path because you're like, this is too hard. I don't know if ML is for me. But if you start with something like that, a little bit more handheld, you start to understand, okay, it's approachable. And then eventually, if you have to build your custom model, you at least know the parameters and where to start.
Exactly.
So I love that. Talking about use cases, you mentioned use cases. What are some of the lessons that you've learned working on implementing a large number of use cases as you talk to so many customers?
Yeah, I think that this is an important point as well, is that like when it comes to use cases, I think it's very important to sort of identify the right use case. So you mentioned this as well, is that like you don't always need AI to solve a use case. So for which use cases do we need AI? And then what is the approach that we're gonna take? And also I think aligning with folks, for example, in the business or other stakeholders, like how we're gonna measure success. What is important for us, and also how we're going to learn and improve. We talked about testing, we talked about an iterative process. So I think, again, identifying the right use case, identifying the KPIs that you want to measure on, the impact that you would like to see, I think doing that early on is very important. And then it starts, of course, everything starts with data. Do we have the right data? What's the quality of the data? Do we need more data? And luckily nowadays, I think, which is a big game changer as well, thanks to the AutoMLs, thanks to the APIs, we don't need enormous amounts of data, right? We can do with less data to get started. And I think so getting access to the data, making sure it's clean, make sure we understand the data correctly, there's nothing wrong with it. I think that's the second. And then we talked about this, then identifying, are we going to use an API? Are we going to use AutoML? Are we going to use a custom model? I think thinking that through, discussing that is then the next step. And then it's just getting started. I think after some point, we know what we want. Let's get started and let's see if we can implement something. And I think that has been something that's changed over the years as well, is that it's so much easier these days to get started. I don't need to get that server that we talked about and install it and maintain it and all those things. No, it's just one click of button and we can get started, which I think is fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun to not have to deal with like the underlying infrastructure that powers any of this. It's just fun to think about, what do I want to build? And then
Exactly.
do I have the data for it? Let's go search for the data and
Yeah.
then start building. So if I was a student right now,
Yes.
it would be so much fun to build projects because the tools are easy to use and you just make whatever is in your imagination actually come to life, which is amazing. So looking ahead, What do you believe is the most exciting potential application of AI that we have yet to see? And you can go open all the doors, like whatever is coming to your mind, whatever craziness is going on.
This is probably the most difficult question because my imagination is not always that great. But I think seeing what generative AI can do is just, for me, it's mind blowing, right? And I think MedPalm was a great example, and you mentioned it, like passing like one of the medical exams. It's that is so impressive for me already. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in the future. I think what will happen is just a lot of folks will actually take this technology and implement new use cases. So I'll probably be surprised every day by what people build. So we've seen I/O and we see some interesting use cases there. For example, I think Wendy's was there. So I think a lot of these great use cases. But the biggest change that I think we're going to see is the way we're interacting with applications. Maybe the way you're booking a trip, right? You can ask the
Yeah.
system to do a lot of you for you, right? Maybe give you a flight, give you the hotels, give you some good restaurants, right? All those things. The way we interact with technology, Priyanka, I think that's going to be the biggest game changer in the next years or the next decade.
Yeah, both of those things, right? The way we interact, and well, and then earlier you mentioned this as well. The way we build things, the way we
Yes.
build and accomplish our use cases, and the way we interact is all changing significantly even today. So, what advice would you give to people in businesses and
Yeah.
individuals that are looking to prepare for the future, in which AI plays this such a
Yeah,
significant role?
I'll keep this very short because I think we covered most of this, right? And I don't want to be in repeat mode. Is that I think identifying the right use case, having a good data strategy, and don't build everything from scratch. So I think if you follow those three things, you'll get a long way. Um, so we talked about those in more detail already.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that was amazing. Very punchy. As we look ahead into the future, and we have been for the entire episode looking ahead into the future, what do you believe are the most critical areas of research and development that need to be addressed?
Yeah, there's so much exciting research happening, but I think a few things that we're going to see, especially in the domain of generative AI, large language models, are probably areas of responsible AI. So trust and safety, of course. I think we'll see a lot of research around this. We'll learn about that as well. I think what we're going to see as well is like how can we run these large models more efficient and cheaper. I think that's something we're going to see a lot as well. It's not always about having the largest model in production, but it's having the model that's right for your use case as well. And what I'm very excited about as well, let's talk about some stuff that's not Gen AI or LLMs, or things like graph neural networks. I think that is an area, or the space of optimization. I think those areas are still also developing very, very rapidly. And I see a lot of great use cases, for example, in the space of graph neural networks as well, like fraud detection, but also marketing use cases. So a lot of exciting stuff in research is happening there as well. So very keen on seeing what's going to happen in the next few years, Priyanka.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Erwin.
Thank you, Priyanka, for having me, and thanks everyone for listening or watching.
Amazing. It has been incredible and insightful to hear all of Erwin's thoughts on the impact and effective use of AI and how we are going to get there. And we look forward to seeing how AI will continue to shape the future around us. And we will bring more exciting guests just like Erwin to give us even more insights and into training and building these models.